Good evening. Today is January 14th, and this is the regular meeting of the Burnsville Planning Commission. I'll call to order. First item on our, actually, welcome back, everybody. Hope everybody had a great holiday and Happy New Year.
Thank you.
It's been
you too.
about a month since we met. Same back to the city staff. And I just want to make a couple of changes on the agenda. On our agenda, it says work session. I'm going to make that item number 4, and then updates is item number 5. So with that, I'll look. Any other changes to the agenda from the commission? No. From city staff?
None.
I'll look for a motion.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
And a second.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Singh, seconded by Mr. Corey. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? And that approves 5-0. Item number 2 is the approval of the minutes from our December 10th, 2012 meeting. Any changes from the commission? See none from city staff?
None from staff.
I'll look for a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
And a second. Motion made by Mr. Julik, seconded by Mr. Tahiri. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? And that also carries 5-0. Which brings us to item number 3, which is a public hearing for Theodore R. Anderson for a PUD amendment to allow installation of a satellite dish on the roof of the existing building located at 190 Cobblestone Lane. Good evening, Mr. Slania.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Let me make sure, is this coming up on your screens?
It is.
All right, great. And as indicated in the staff background, the application is for a PUD amendment. There's an existing office building at 190 Cobblestone. The new property owner, Ted Anderson, purchased the building back in 2012 and is at this time requesting the installation of a satellite dish. Depending on the size of the satellite dish, the ordinance may allow them as a permitted use, or in this case, because it exceeds the 6.5 feet limitation, it is requires a conditional use permit or a planned unit development amendment. The property is Zone B3, which is general business. It is designated as such in the comprehensive plan. As you can see, the site is just over an acre in size, is located at Cobblestone is right here, Grand Avenue is right here, the I-35W entrance from County Road 42 is right here, and the balance of the interstate is right here. The building does sits a little bit higher than the interstate does. The building was originally constructed in 1991. There have been no additional land use approvals to the site since then. It has continued to operate as an office building during that time. It is 2 stories tall. What I'd like to indicate with this is there are no deviations requested by the applicant. The proposal is compliant with the zoning requirements. Oftentimes with the PUD we discuss the benefits of deviations. In this situation there are no deviations, but obviously there are benefits to keeping these tenants in the building. The property owner purchased it, and if it's not full at this time, I know it will be very soon, and it just puts a use back in a key building for the city. The communications company that the applicant owns receives radio transmissions, thus the satellite dish being proposed. It monitors them, any number of more detailed things that the applicant can get into as we go ahead. It is not transmitting. It is not originating the radio signal. We're not dealing with the very large 100-foot towers that you may think of when associated with a radio antenna or radio station. They do mix commercials, sound effects, things like that. But again, you'll see in the images on the screen, we're dealing with a much smaller antenna than a radio station. This is the existing dish. This is their current location in Eagan. You can see the off-white or slightly gray color of the dish. Standing from grade to the top of the dish is just under 12 feet. The dish itself, I believe, is right around 9 feet in diameter. The image that you see on the screen here is at the existing building. This is a new support system the applicant has purchased. What you see, and I hope it's easy to see here, is a white flag, or actually it's a white marker that would indicate the top of the dish once it's set into this support system, to give you an idea of the dimensions, how tall it's going to look here. The building, as we get to some of these other images, does have a mansard roof, so there is usable space on the roof. There's obviously existing HVAC equipment up here that's not visible because it does sit behind the top of that roof line. The ordinance requires these antennas to blend into the surrounding environment to the maximum extent possible. Staff met with the applicant a number of times prior to purchase of the building. We did look at ground locations, connecting it to an addition near their trash enclosure. There are certain issues with, obviously, the radio transmission. It's got to be directed to a certain point on the southern sky with limited interruptions. Staff did not want it to be an eyesore in the parking lot, and screening it. It would be difficult to fully screen this thing if it was sitting on the parking lot. And further, from the applicant's standpoint, they don't want vehicles hitting it in the parking lot or snow being plowed up against it or anything like that. So after reviewing a number of options, staff, the applicant, agreed looking at the roof location would be the best bet. It would provide the least impact to the site. Once the applicant confirmed the roof could take that additional weight, we're in with an application. Here you'll see on this page a number of other views. Here are existing buildings surrounding the subject site, and they do have rooftop units. East Ridge Point, this is actually fronts on Nicollet Avenue. As you're heading down to 42, you'll notice it. Here is the existing building, again, the two-story building, the mansard roof, and you can see up in that image that white marker that would indicate the top of the satellite dish. If it's difficult to see on the screen in front of you, this was included in your packet. It may show up more clearly on your own devices. Due to the use of the site as office, the parking lot satisfies the required parking stall count. The applicant is not making any other changes to the building or the parking lot. Signage has yet to be determined, as he is a new property owner and getting things up to date. Staff is recommending approval. There were no conditions indicated by staff, but we can certainly discuss any the Planning Commission is interested in. Ted Anderson, as the property owner and applicant, is here, should you have any questions that I can't answer.
Thank you, Mr. Slania. And also, I don't know if it was your idea or the property owner's idea, but having that flag up there was a good way to show us exactly what it's going to look like.
That was the applicant, and it
So thank you
helped
for
quite a
doing that.
bit.
I'm sure that helped the rest of the commission as well as myself. Are there any questions of city staff? Mr. Singh?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There were two things that I thought about when looking at the background information on this application. The first one you touched on a little while ago, the base, how sound it is up there to take on that weight, and because it would be on the roof, in case of high winds, we need to be fastened, strong enough to endure bad weather and strong winds. That was the first. And the second one, I know this building very well. I've been into that building when it was being used, and it has been vacant for quite a while now. And driving from 35W, either north or south, this would be very conspicuous for traffic. And I did not want this to be like an eyesore. The colors need to blend in so that it doesn't stand out, that it be an eyesore for the neighboring businesses. That was my concern, the two concerns I have. And I think that the applicant has met with staff and you guys have discussed that. So as long as staff is satisfied that those two things are taken care of, I'm okay with the application.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Any other comments or questions? To kind of piggyback on Mr. Singh's thoughts, I think they picked a perfect building for this with the design of the roof already. It's going to shield quite a bit of the satellite dish, so it's a good job in picking the building. And I too was concerned about it, but I drove around the site, and I think you can see it, but it'll blend in well, and I don't think it'll be that noticeable. And I agree with city staff about not putting it in the parking lot. I think it would look much worse down on the ground level than it will at this level. So, any other comments, Mr. Terry?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My concern question is follow up Mr. Ram's comments that this unit installed on an existing roof, I'm sure has some significant weights that need to be considered, and I hope city would look into some structural engineer to verify and confirm the existing roof can support the load, additional load on the frame. And if they're okay with that and confirm, I'm okay with
That's a good point, Mr. Terry, and maybe Chris, you can
Yeah.
touch on that. If there's
Thank
a
you, Mr.
permitting
Chair.
process or something.
Commissioners, as staff reviewed this, we started this back in 2012. Planning staff, as well as our building official, had discussions with the applicant, and the engineering or the technical requirements were reviewed by our building official to make sure, before we went too far down the line, that the existing building could hold what was proposed.
Thank you.
Mr. Jewett?
Yeah, this is just more of a point. Thank you, Chair. A little point of clarity here. It's their structural engineer that determined whether the roof could sustain it or not. Our city building staff just reviewed
The presented
information.
documents.
Okay, 'cause I
Correct.
think the city would hold no liability whatsoever if the roof wasn't strong enough.
Correct.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I will open up the public hearing. This is a public hearing. Anyone wishing to come forward now, please come forward. And seeing no one, I will close the public hearing and open up for discussion. Do you want the applicant to come up? Okay.
No, thanks, Chair.
Specific questions to ask, you have the answer.
I don't think there's any questions for the commission, so.
Not a question, Mr. Chair. I think this, first of all, I would support this application, put the building to use. Welcome back to Genesis, to Burnsville. This is your home, and we hope that the City Council would give approval to this application. I think it shows that, to me, that businesses really appreciate Burnsville to be their home. And Genesis being away and is coming back now is a good move on their part, and it will benefit the city. And so, Mr. Chair, I will support this application.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Any other comments? Again, piggybacking on Mr. Singh, I think it was 50 jobs moving back to Burnsville, so we're always excited when we see those businesses coming in and hanging their shingle on our buildings outside of Burnsville. So, thank you. With that, no other comments or questions, I'll look for a motion. Mr. Julich?
I move that the Planning Commission recommend approval of the Theodore R. Anderson PUD amendment to allow installation of the satellite dish on the roof of the existing building located at 190 Cobblestone Lane as proposed.
And a second?
I'll second it.
Motion made by Mr. Julich, seconded by Mr. Corey. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. And that motion also carries 5-0. Mr. Anderson, this will go to the City Council next Tuesday, January 22nd. So I wish you luck. Thank you. Which brings us to item number 4, which is our discussion of our Planning Commission's 2013 work plan. And Mr. Slaney is going to lead us in this.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. We would like to take this opportunity to review the items from our 2012 work plan with the Commission, let you know where we are, let you know somehow we've already got a full 2013 and it's barely started, but there are some comments, some items I wanted to present to the Commission and see if there are outstanding items the Commission would like to take a look at for their work plan in 2013. To start with, I included the 2012 work plan with some notes on there. Unfortunately, not all of the items were completed. To start with, the subdivision ordinance does need to be updated. As we, as staff, look at it, it seems the amendment will be more like a rewrite than just an ordinance update. It seems outdated, antiquated, and we'd like to take a much broader look at it and possibly do a full rewrite. That's going to take time and money, whether it's city staff doing it or a consultant, and that just does not seem to be on the books to get it all completed in 2013. So at this point, we're proposing that be a carryover into 2013, possibly 2014. The items we did complete were zoning ordinance updates. There were some properties that were rezoned and the comprehensive plan designations were changed, so that all matched up. Deb and our engineering department also looked at the 2010 census, and transportation updates were part of that. We are in the process of looking at the metal roofs, but staff did not get to the display pads that came up for 2012 dealing with the car dealerships. So from a staff level, we're recommending the subdivision ordinance, the metal roofing, and the display pads be carried over onto the 2013 work plan. There are also a number of factors coming into play from the City Council. They are looking at, in the very near future, mobile vending the food trucks that became so popular in 2012. We expect that's going to continue to grow in 2013, and our ordinance does allow them with some provisions, but the ordinance was not written to address the food trucks the way we're currently seeing them. So we'd like to take a look at that. The Planning Commission, the City Council will have a work session, decide how they would like that addressed, whether they handle it or whether the Planning Commission take a look at those requirements. The same with the I-3 office uses. I-3 is in our industrial park. It is it's the southwest corner of the city, or southwest of County Road 42 in Judicial. It is our headquarters area, if you will. Rosemont Aerospace, Goodrich, Northern Tool and Equipment have their headquarters there. There have been situations at a staff level, we've looked at uses that maybe that's not the best location for these uses as general office. Maybe it is a good location. We're just looking to revisit that. A lot of these uses are permitted uses in I-3. Maybe it's something we want to be more restrictive in the I-3 district to make sure it's intended for office or headquarters, office warehouse, rather than on the edge of being retail, which could be a better fit in the B3 district, the other side of 42 near the Burnsville Center. So that is something that we'll be discussing with the City Council to see what their pleasure would be as to which group would tackle that. Finally, the City Council is looking at a study on thrift stores. That is on the heels of a land use change. The council's got some concerns with the intensity or the density of these stores around Burnsville Center, around 42. And again, I think it's going to be something the Planning Commission will look at in 2013. With all that being said, it's with all that being said, it's certainly not going to be a dull year, but I wanted to bring that to your attention, as well as if you look at the background in your packet, I listed out a few items: drive-through stacking, wellhead protection, sustainable streets, live-work units, attracting young adults to Burnsville. These are all things that staff and or the Planning Commission have discussed in the past. We keep track of these as they come up. If it's not something the Planning Commission wants to add in 2013, we will keep track of it, make sure we bring it back to future commissions. I also wanted to indicate there was an item Commissioner Julich had brought up in the past that I did not put on the list. We had talked about performance standards for churches, schools, other institutional uses that sit in single-family residential zone districts. And when you've got a church, a large church with a steeple or a spire, something like that, within 50-some feet of a single-family residential lot, it's not necessarily the same land use. They're both zoned I-1, but they can have tremendous impacts on each other. And the idea of studying those land uses and studying what other communities do to protect the single-family homes near churches and schools had come up, and I apologize for not including that. It is on another list we have. So, Commissioners, at this point, I included in your packet a draft work plan that I've got on the screen right here. If there are changes to that you'd like to make, including, but not limited to, adding a few more items. And we're certainly open for discussion. I would like a recommendation from the Planning Commission so we can present this to the council in the near future. But I think it'd be good to have some open discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Slaney. And so just looking at the list that's, that you're proposing, the metal roof, would you consider that mostly done, partially done?
Yes, 60 to 80% complete.
Okay, so we'll see that probably in the next month or two?
You'll see a recap of it, and then my intent at this point is to bring back some language with other minor housekeeping things.
Okay. And then display, dealership display pads, that's something we've kind of carried forward.
Correct.
Really no work has been done on it yet?
No work's been done. I don't see us reinventing the wheel. I don't think it'll be a 2 or 3 month study of anything. I just need to bring some information back.
Correct me if I'm remembering this incorrectly, but I think that stemmed from some of the County Road, Highway 13 dealerships that we want screening in front of the pads, but they really weren't
Correct.
fitting the use.
The ordinance requires the screening. The operators are looking to have those pads to draw attention to the vehicle. So it was pushing and pulling of the same item that we wanted to look at.
Okay.
That has come up a few times.
Right, and if I remember right, we usually made them put in some screening, just not in front of their display pads.
Correct.
The study of the thrift stores, I think that's something that's come out of the council, and that'll probably be a high priority.
Yes.
Okay. Same with mobile vending. You think
It'll
that'll-
be a priority. Again, I didn't want to say first or second half of 2013. I know the council's going to have their all-day work session yet in January, and they're going to discuss that a little more.
Okay, Mr. Judd?
Just a quick question on the mobile vending. What's is there a lot more mobile vending in the city now? Or what's driving that one?
There is more mobile vending than there used to be. We expect that will continue in the future.
It seemed like it's the latest trend
Is,
in food.
is this targeted at food vending?
Food trucks is where it started, and I see that being the main focus. There's also the idea that some of these vending, food trucks, what have you, are looking to get into city parks and city properties. We're not sure if that's a good idea or not, and part of the discussion, it will be part of that discussion.
I-3, I think you touched on that. That's at end of 42 Savage border.
Correct.
Okay. And then the subdivision, you said that's going to be at least a year, probably, if
Yes.
not two. And then, I don't know what page this is on, but it was in our packet. We went through some drive-through stacking. And I know this has come up in the past, and this is the ordinance requires so many cars stacked, but if it's a pharmacy, you're probably not going to have that many cars in the queue like you would at a McDonald's.
Correct. The ordinance gives us one standard for drive-throughs.
Okay.
It doesn't distinguish between banks and fast food, which maybe fast food should have a larger stacking requirement than the ordinance, and maybe pharmacies and banks should have a smaller, or vice versa.
When McDonald's came through last year or 2 years ago, I forget what it was, they actually, the majority of their business now is drive-through traffic as opposed to walk-in, so it's something. I'm not sure what the Identify Wellhead Protection Area is.
That is a project we'll work with our engineering department to make sure we have in place landscaping, stormwater drainage requirements, so that as development happens in the MRQ and we start moving north of 13, we're doing what is necessary and prudent to protect our drinking water.
Okay. Sustainable streets and rollable cities, I'm guessing that's more about walking and biking.
It is walking and biking, as well as I know our engineering department has considered reducing widths and dimensions of our streets, not necessarily parking lots, but city streets, determining when parking, overnight parking is necessarily, when it's not, just to reduce hard surface
Okay.
and runoff.
Promoting live work units, is that kind of the mixed-use buildings types of?
Correct.
And then plans and standards to attract young adults to Burnsville. I'm sure that would be a good one to crack if we could figure it out. And then Mr. Julik's comment about the R1 standards as far as churches. Just a comment or question about that. You mentioned they put up a 50-foot steeple. Is there no height restrictions in the R1?
There are through a conditional use permit.
Okay.
But the height of the steeple is not in direct relationship to their proximity to a single-family home. So you've got a setback to the building, but the setback doesn't relate to how tall the steeple may be or other.
So are they permitted through PUD or are they just a permitted use?
The schools are permitted straight out in R1. Church and religious institutions are conditional uses in R1. But besides the height, there's very little regulation on parking lot design, lighting design, and things like that when it is in a residential neighborhood.
Since it's a CU conditional use, a lot of it's up to the city and the commission and the council?
And much of these are existing sites. We did have one or two new churches, but a lot of that is in now moving towards commercial rather than residential.
Okay.
Churches are still growing. They're still looking to expand. This one in particular that raised these questions was up on Highway 13, where they were doing a pretty substantial building addition to the church, and they're in close proximity to some of their neighbors.
Okay. I hope that gives the commission kind of a good background. Mr. Julik, do you still have a question?
Oh, just, I don't know if you want to discuss much tonight, or just maybe I just like a little bit more information on some of the things that you had. The subdivision ordinance update, why is that a major rewrite? Is what's driving that?
It's simply out of date for Burnsville, where we are as a community. The last substantial amendment was done in the 70s, I think the early 70s, and it's not technically up to speed on current standards.
So this would be targeted at the fact that the city's more mature and
Correct.
Updates to reflect that?
Correct.
Okay. And then on the on the I3 office uses thing, is that being driven a little bit about?
That's driven at this point simply by staff, because we ran into some quandaries with land uses. Again, land uses are not as black and white as they used to be. We're into more gray areas, and we wanted a second opinion. We had a discussion with the council, and they suggested it come back through the planning commission at some point.
Okay, is this is because we were getting a lot of, I'm going to say, conditional uses or PUDs in that area for like the volleyball stuff. And this and that.
Correct.
So the I3 wasn't encompassing enough for the changes that were occurring
Correct.
in the area?
Or detailed enough to possibly restrict some of those uses.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Singh?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to be clear, the mobile vending and the thrift stores, are those the council would like us to address, or the council has not made a decision?
The council has not made a formal decision or formal direction to have you study it. Staff believes it will be coming your way shortly.
The next thing, Mr. Chair, I think we have to be very careful. I can see that 2013 will be a very busy year for this commission. And to take on a very full plate of work on our work plan for the year, we have to be careful not to stretch ourselves too much. We know from past experience that we are going to have a busy year with other things that are not on the work plan, and so be careful. Let's be careful and don't put too much on our plan for this year.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. That's a good point. I'm sure things will pop up in the middle of the year that we can't foresee right now, and it seems like hopefully the economy is turning around, and we'll see more applications of businesses and residents that want to do things in our city. So I do agree. I just wanted to go through them all and just make sure everybody understands what they all are, and open it up if there's any other comments or concerns that the commission wants to look at. That now's our time to look at those. Mr. Drulick?
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Slaney, are there, this goes back to Commissioner Singh's comment, I think. Yeah, are you seeing, I think we're already seeing an uptick on the residential side, at least within the Twin Cities area, maybe not in Burnsville specifically. Are you guys, is the planning staff seeing more applicants for driving more things as we get into the spring building season and such?
We are. Let me start with the residential. We've got a number of permits. I couldn't tell you, how many permits we have versus number of lots, but the Forest Park Heights project in southwest Burnsville is picking up. It started at the end of 2012, and we think we're gonna keep seeing permits for new homes out there, and a lot of activity in 2013. So that's encouraging. At this point, that's our only major subdivision left, or substantial subdivision. We are still getting a lot of single-family permits for additions, interior remodels, just updating. I would agree from the commercial side of things, 2013 is going to be very busy. We've had indications from Fairview Hospital that they have very big things in store for 2013. A lot of that is going to be not only private development, but also city street projects to help facilitate those. We know that the 5 and 13 project's going to hopefully, or we know it's going to move ahead, and hopefully that spurs some other redevelopment. So, yeah, at this point, we expect some good things out of 2013, and as Chair Tyken said, there's always something that pops up in the middle of the summer that we don't foresee at this point in time.
All right, and then just a curiosity thing a little bit. I don't want to add it to the list or anything, but is there? I know I don't remember how many years ago now, but there was talk about that railroad corridor that runs through kind of the western Burnsville that's sort of not really used. Is there any updates on that? Is there anything happening with that?
I had heard second or third or fourth hand that the railroad was interested in selling that or giving it up, because it's although it's unused, it is still active. It is under their possession, ownership. That's all I've heard, is a brief rumor that was happening.
Thank you.
Mr. Singh?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. I am comfortable with us having on our 2013 work plan the list that's shown there: residential metal roofs, dealership display pads, study of thrift stores, mobile vending, the I-3 office use, and the subdivision ordinance update. But that one, the last one there, you said can go over next year, right?
Correct.
Subdivision.
We expect.
So I'm comfortable with all the others for our plan, unless the other commissioners have other things that they would like to add to that. I'm comfortable with these.
Thank you, Mr. Singh, and we'll go to Mr. Corey.
I just had a kind of a question with sort of playing off the, if there's an uptick in potential business, is the stacking something that you see or foresee coming up as an issue where we should maybe get ahead of that with some direction before it's presented to us, so we don't have sort of ad hoc each time they come up type of thing? And it may not be that much of an issue, but I was just thinking if we're going to be getting a lot of requests over the next year and a half, that might be something be good to have direction on before we get to that point.
That's a great point, Commissioners. I certainly think it should be near the top of the list. I don't know that we need to tackle it in 2013. We did have a year or year and a half where we had a number of drive-through issues and fast food restaurants opening up. For whatever reason, that's slowed down right now. I do think if we can keep it on the short list and get to it either this year or next year, I think that'd be helpful for everyone. We do have ways of addressing it through CUPs and PUDs, so our hands are not completely tied, but we do know it's out of date.
Maybe that's something that if we do get a influx of those, we can kind of look at them and apply those standards as we move forward with a amendment. The other question I was going to ask, if we, for some reason, have to open up the ordinances around drive-through or R1, is that something we could look at that time? So if something else spurs us digging into those ordinances.
Absolutely. Right, as I said, I think the residential metal roofs we can wrap up quickly, and then we'll move into the display pads. If we get through that or need to delay it to add the drive-through, we certainly can.
Okay.
And if I can, Commissioners, Mr. Chair, I know it's been a long year. If there are things that we talked about or meetings or projects that you recall that aren't on this list that you'd like to add or think we should just keep in the back of our minds, please let me know. Now or in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Slaney. Any other comments? I think Mr. Singh likes the list. I agree with him. If everybody's agreeable to that, we'll look for a motion to present this to the City Council or adopt it.
Motion to recommend it to the City Council.
Okay.
Just a question of the chair before, are we going to include the subdivision ordinance or just drop that
I
next year?
think we should include it as a 2013, 2014.
Okay.
I think Chris is saying,
Might-
that it's a multi-year thing for staff
Yes.
to deal with. So, yeah.
Correct.
If we have the time and money, we'd love to tackle it this year.
Mr. Chair, I beg to move that the Planning Commission recommend to our City Council a work plan for 2013 that includes the following: residential metal roofs, dealership display pads, study of thrift stores, mobile vending, the I-3 office use. That's it. Oh, no, and the last one, subdivision ordinance update, and that can be 2013/2014.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Julik, Mr. Singh, seconded by Mr. Julik. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? And that motion carries.
Mr. Chair, just wish you well in your presentation to the City Council.
Thank you.
It's always fun.
It's always fun. What was the date on that?
We will we'll take this to the City Council next Tuesday, January 22nd.
On the 22nd. So you can tune in to the council meeting and watch me. That brings us to item number 5, which is the update section of our agenda. And I just got a couple of things, and then I'll open it up to the commission. One is the cable franchise renewal. I think Mr. Slaney has sent everybody an email about that, and I know Mr. Singh and myself came up through the Telecommunications Commission, which dealt with the cable franchise agreement. So I'm sure the both of us will be in attendance in one of those meetings, and I encourage the rest of you to try to attend if all possible. And then I noticed this week, or maybe it was last week, that we have a new logo in the city, and it's very nice and very updated, so it's good to see, and I'm sure will carry us forward for a while. That's all I have. Mr. Julik?
I just wanted to, thank you, Chair. Just wanted to commend staff and everybody else in the Burnsville involved in the recent update to the old Menards site on Highway 13. Had an opportunity to make a wrong turn going to the new Menards right around the holidays here, and found myself in the parking lot there, and they just did a really good job on the parking lot, on the facade of the building. I didn't drive behind it to look at the bus area and how well that was screened, but took a site that was not as aesthetically pleasing as one would want, and they did a good job there, and the new owners and everybody involved should be commended, because it really did spruce up that site, and it looked pretty nice.
And you didn't lose your shocks driving through the parking lot?
No.
Like before, so. Thank you, Mr. Julik. Anything else? Mr. Singh?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Regarding the upcoming focus groups on cable service, community media, and technology, I brought my copy of the information that Mr. Slania sent us, because, as you rightly said, both of us came through the Telecommunications Commission. We both shared it. I was wondering if the two of us can attend the same one, so we can bring our experience to bear in the discussions there.
I would certainly be open to that. Let's
Yeah, we can talk about that later.
afterwards.
But I just want for the citizens of Burnsville to know that they are encouraged to come out to one of these seminars, these what they call focus groups. The first one will be held on Tuesday, February 26th, 9:30 to 11:30 a.m. at Burnsville City Hall. The next will be Tuesday, February 26th again, but from 2:30 to 4:30 p.m. at the City Hall here. The next one, February 27th, Wednesday, 9:30 to 11:30 a.m., Diamond Head Education Center, Classroom B. And the next, same day, February 27th, 4 to 6 p.m. at Burnsville High School, Lecture Hall C180. Then the next is on Thursday, February 28th, 1 to 3 p.m., Diamond Head Education Center, Classroom B104. And the final one, Thursday, February 28th, 6 to 8 p.m., Burnsville City Hall, right in council chambers here. We are encouraging all citizens of Burnsville to come out and share their views on in these focus groups, and help to determine the cable service in our city. It's important. Revenue received from the cable companies is used to put the city council on TV, planning commission, and other commissions on TV. So it's important, and for other reasons it's very important. So we are encouraging all the citizens to come out and share their views. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Singh, for that update. And if anybody missed any of those meetings, they can call the city or check it out online.
Correct.
And again, as Mr. Singh said, if you are a Comcast subscriber in the city, you pay a fee on your bill every month that goes towards not only the city business, but also the school, broadcasting sports, games, prom, school board meetings, other activities within the city. So if you care about the future of that, please show up. Mr. Slania?
Staff just has a number of comments I'll get through quickly. The next Planning Commission meeting for the January 28th is going to be canceled. We've got a number of big projects coming up, and we're trying to consolidate those and make the best use of time we can. We'll cancel the January 28th. I expect we'll have both meetings in February. You'll hear more about this as we get closer, but the state of the city will be on Wednesday, February 20th. The Planning Commission is always invited to attend that. You'll get more details as we get closer. And last but not least, some changes in the city's landscape that you'll see. Clear Channel is moving forward with dynamic billboards on 35W north of Highway 13. If it's not down yet, in the next few days, the sign on County Road 11 and I-35E will come down. In turn, that gives Clear Channel the ability to change two faces to dynamic. There'll be two separate signs north of 13 on 35W. One of them, the north-facing sign, will be dynamic. One of them, the south-facing sign, will be dynamic. And the city will have public service announcements and other information on there, just as any paid vendor will. So if you're out and about, take a look at that. We will probably see that happen in the next few weeks.
Thank you, Mr. Salinia. Any other updates from the commission? And just a point to note here is the some of the members of the Planning Commission might gather at Carboni's at 251 West Burnsville Parkway for a purely social event, but as usual, all members of the public are welcome to come and show up. So I just want to throw that out, and hopefully some of you guys can make it. With that, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So move, Mr. Chair.
And a second. Motion made by Mr. Singh, seconded by Mr. Tahri. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, and we are adjourned. Thank you, and have a great night.